We heard a lot about BRICS during the bygone era of the Ukraine war. And so we know now that the GDP of the BRICS nations has actually overgrown the GDP of the G7 nations. And so the BRICS countries are becoming a major player on the world stage now. And let's see what some of these BRICS countries have to say about the Israel-Palestine conflict. Let's first go to a video of Brazilian President Lula da Silva.
É genocídio que já matou quase 2.000 crianças que não tem nada a ver com essa.
This is old news. He says, I'll read the subtitles. They've already killed nearly 2,000 children. Well, now it's over 3,000 children. This was a while ago. This was a few days ago. How fast things change. Who have nothing to do with this, who are victims of this conflict. And honestly, I cannot understand how any human is capable of waging a war knowing the result will be the death of innocent children. This is not about arguing over who is right, who is wrong, who shot first, and who shot last.
Luis Inácio Lula da Silva has long supported Palestinian rights. Here he is wearing a keffiyeh while meeting with Brazil's Palestinian community earlier in 2022. During the meeting, Lula proclaimed Palestinians deserve our full attention and solidarity, and reiterated Palestinians' right to live in a free and sovereign state. Lula first served as Brazilian president from 2003 to 2010. During his presidency, Brazil recognized Palestine as an independent state. Several other Latin American countries followed suit.
Okay, so Lula da Silva calling this a genocide. I don't see how anybody could be on board with a war that kills innocent children. Now, we probably should, just as a gimmick, go in order. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. But we won't, because I didn't think of that until just now. So instead, let's go to China.
Next time. Next
time.
There will be a next time, sadly.
Yeah. China urges Gaza ceasefire, willing to do whatever needed to end violence. Touring the Middle East, Beijing's special envoy Zai Jun expresses concern about the risk of widening conflict. This is Al Jazeera. China is willing to do whatever is conducive to promote dialogue, secure a ceasefire, and restore peace amid the deepening conflict in Gaza, China's state media has reported, citing the country's special envoy on the Middle East. Veteran diplomat, Zai Jun is currently on a tour of the region and described the situation in Gaza as very serious, state-run China Central Television said on Monday. He also said a potential large-scale ground conflict and armed conflict spreading to neighboring countries were, quote, worrisome. China will continue close communication with all parties in the international community, said Zai, who took part in Sunday's Cairo Peace Summit, where United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who Israel tried to have bounced, called for swift action to end this god-awful nightmare after 2 weeks of war between Israel and the armed group Hamas. There's some acknowledgement of reality from China, this god-awful nightmare. I haven't heard Joe Biden refer to this as a god-awful nightmare. Anybody? What about Russia? Surely Russia's on the wrong side of this, right? Putin's a madman, as Jamal Bowman says. Oh, Russia said Israeli bombardment of Gaza is against international law. Russia's comments come as Hamas tries to locate 8 Russian Israeli citizens among the hostages it took during its attack on Israel. Israel's bombardment of Gaza runs counter to international law and risks creating a catastrophe that could last decades, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has said. Lavrov made the comment, some of Moscow's most critical of Israel yet, in an interview with the Belarusian state news agency Belta, which released them on Saturday. While we condemn terrorism, we categorically disagree that you can respond to terrorism by violating the norms of international humanitarian law, including indiscriminately using force against targets where civilians are known to be present, including hostages that have been taken, he said. It was impossible, he added, to destroy Hamas, as Israel has pledged to do, without destroying Gaza, along with most of its civilian population. See, even the madman says this is too far. Even the madman says, no, you can't do this. If Gaza is destroyed and 2 million inhabitants are expelled, as some politicians in Israel and abroad propose, this will create a catastrophe for many decades, if not centuries, warned Lavrov. It is necessary to stop and to announce humanitarian programs to save the population under blockade. Okay, now we go to South Africa. Cyril Ramaphosa slams Israeli occupation. Why South Africa is sympathetic to Palestine. Why would a country like South Africa
That's really, I didn't see that
sympathetic
coming.
to Palestine?
That's very strange.
Yeah, that's a tough nut to crack there. On Saturday, Cyril Ramaphosa, surrounded by his colleagues from the ruling African National Congress, spoke to the press draped in the traditional Palestinian scarf. We are all standing here pledging our solidarity with the people of Palestine. We stand here because we are deeply concerned about the atrocities that are unfolding in the Middle East. We have a full understanding of how the people of Palestine have taken up this issue because they are people, as many countries and leaders in the world have opined, that have been under occupation for almost 75 years, Ramaphosa said. He also called upon international bodies to make sure that peace is restored in Palestine. Ramaphosa called for a ceasefire the day of the attack. He said we need a cessation of violence immediately. On October 7th, he came out and said that. So the only country we haven't mentioned so far is India. Narendra Modi, as one would suspect, is at least, as the story goes, more sympathetic to Israel. Not that he's come out forcefully in defense of Israel. He has spoken to both Israeli leaders and Palestinian leaders. He has not come out forcefully in one direction or the other on this. But you know who has? The people of India. So wait till you see this footage here. I'm not going to play the audio because there's music that could be a copyright issue. But this is from the Kerala region of India, and the chants go down with racism, down with Zionism, save Palestine. Take a look at this crowd. Wow. Look at that.
Wow.
So this is India.
Where in India was this? Do you know?
The Kerala region. I assume this is one of the Muslim regions. This is the Indian Union Muslim League put out this video. They sponsored this. This was a rally that they sponsored. Look at that turnout. Look at that sea of humanity. You know, when you and Jose did the intervention on Rachel Maddow, Jose, under duress, kept his poise and made the important point that if you look at countries around the world, like the ones we just showed you, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and many others, obviously, the UN voted 120-14 in favor of a truce. The people of the world want peace. That's what Jose told Rachel Maddow. All these other countries want peace. We are one of the very few, very, very few, who want more war. And so here you have the BRICS alliance weighing in on this.
Well, and when you look at a lot of this, when you look at these events unfolding, it keeps reminding me of the line, our brilliant audience will know what movie this is from, Are We the Bad Guys?
Well, that's like Are We the Baddies? It's a famous, I don't know what movie it's
from. Are We the Baddies?
But that's kind of a viral clip from, I don't know what movie it's from. It's from like a comedy.
Is it?
Are We the Baddies, right? That's the viral clip.
Right. That's what I keep thinking of. And obviously we are in this situation, but it makes you reevaluate all of this history, as a lot of our back and forth, a lot of our viewers who are more focused on foreign policy, more in the kind of gray zone orientation, will often argue that our historical perspective on Russia and on China is skewed. And, you know, I'm sure to some extent that's true, right? I mean, we live in the West. We live in the heart of the West. We live in the imperial core of the West. So, of course, a lot of our received wisdom about who the antagonists have been over the last 100 years and whose actions have been justified and whose haven't certainly have a lot of distortion to it, even if you take an interest in history, as I do and you do. China, I mean, from my knowledge of China, this doesn't surprise me. I mean, this goes back to their early history. China has always been very reticent to have war and has always seen it as wasteful, as a waste of resources, a waste of lives. They have tended not to want to have conflicts with outside powers. Now, some will say, well, what about wars within their area, yeah, they've always been willing to fight for what they feel is theirs, whether you agree with their perspective on what that is or not. But they've just never been a colonizing power. They've never really been interested in going into other territories and taking over. Certainly they had enough technological advantage to do that with a lot of their neighbors over the course of their history. And they just never had very much interest in expanding beyond themselves. That's why I always say a world led by China rather than America would probably be more peaceful. Would they eventually be corrupted by imperial power? Yeah, probably. I mean, all nations will probably succumb to that over time in a similar position. But they definitely have a cultural bias against that kind of interference in other cultures that we in the West are quite the opposite in our perspective. But whatever your litigation is of the past, of that history, certainly at this point, we are the monsters. We are, I keep thinking of the Twilight Zone episode of the kid who can wish everybody away into the cornfield. It almost feels like the rest of the world are those people who feel like they have to walk on eggshells around this monstrous power and are just figuring out how you kill it so that you can have freedom.
Yeah, absolutely. No, there's no other way to look at it than that, really. When you look at the sentiment around the world and even within our own country, right? I mean, the position is becoming untenable, more and more untenable by the second, which is a good thing, which is a very good thing. And to answer your question, Mitchell and Webb comedy sketch. So yes,
is that where that came from?
UK comedy show. I knew it was a comedy team that did that because I used to work for a tour company based in the UK, and one of the customer service guys who was he was related to the owner. He was a great, funny guy. And we screwed up something where we screwed up something. I forget what it was. We had to give a bunch of refunds. Either a tour guide didn't show up, or it was a tour guide fucked up, or whatever. And all these people were bombarding us with complaints. And he says, "Keaton, are we the baddies?" and then I said, "What are you talking about?" Because I didn't know the sketch. He assumed I did because he's from the UK. It's famous over there. Are we the baddies? And then he taught me what that meant. So that's how I knew it was some kind of European comedy team, but I didn't know which it was. So
I didn't even realize that. Just like a lot of people know, I'm walking here. Here. Yeah. They have no idea where it came from. Mm-hmm. Like, I know that line, but I didn't know that's where it came from.
Please clap.